Okay. Show me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dutch SC channel. Thank you very much for tuning in for a video about external microphones, such as you see here, for action cameras. You might be using an action camera on your motorcycle helmet, for instance, and have an external microphone in your helmet to record your narration, or you might be using an action camera on your head with a microphone on the side to record proper audio. See, the microphone in these action cameras are often so-so. This is an SJcam camera, as you can tell. This how-to video will also apply to, well, basically any action camera that can be fitted out with an external microphone, such as a GoPro, a Sony camera, whatever. If you use an external microphone, you have probably found that the cable on those microphones is often far too long. Far too long. And that's, well, obviously to enable you to place that microphone in a different location, maybe on your sleeve and such. But oftentimes, again, this wire is far too long. As you can see here, I've got it bundled up to the side of my head, basically, which is highly annoying. And in this video I'm going to show you how to shorten these wires up to the length you want. Also, again, if you use an action camera mounted on your motorcycle helmet and you have that wire only a little bit too long, it might flop around and annoy the hell out of you. So all the more reason to shorten these wires, and again, in this video I'm going to show you how. Alright, we're gonna need a couple of things. Obviously the microphone with wire that's far too long, and this is an SJcam microphone. This instruction should work for any microphone, external microphone that has a wire. Any of them will have a 2-strand cable, as you'll see in a minute. We'll need a wire clipper. We'll need some shrink tube, approximately 3 centimeters, 2 inches, I'd say, more or less. You can see from the length of my finger how much I'm gonna be using. And we'll need a soldering iron, because yes, there will be soldering involved, and some soldering tin. Alright, let's get started. Alright, here comes the scary part. We're gonna have to clip this wire. And the spot you select for your weld or splice is not super duper important, but you should keep in mind that the 3 centimeter splice will be more stiff. As you can tell, this wire is nice and supple. After we've made our weld or splice, that spot won't be as supple. There'll be maybe some tape and this shrink tube. So yeah, you should keep that in mind, that the spot you make your splice at won't be as supple. So keep that in mind in your wire routing. What would be a convenient spot for your wire to be stiff, basically, or stiff, less supple. Okay, I'm gonna select approximately 5 centimeters from my connector. It's not convenient to splice your wire like 1 centimeter out from that connector. Maybe you'll have to redo your splice. I've had that happen once. This video will help you prevent having to do that, by the way. That's why I'm basically making this video, because my first splice didn't work out well. Okay, so I'm gonna put my splice 5 centimeters in from the connector. 5 centimeters. And that's approximately a finger length. If you're in inch country, I don't know what 5 centimeters is in inches, but there we go. Spliced. There's no going back now. And this is as good a time as any to put that shrink tube on your wire. This is a convenient moment for it. So slide that up on your wire. Now the total length of my wire I've measured that in advance, should be 17 centimeters, and that'll be different for you, of course. And I'll add 1 centimeter for my splice. There'll be a little of the wire will be lost in our splice, so I'll need an 18 centimeter wire. All said and done. This is 5, 17, 18. Okay, 18 there, more or less. Yeah, that's where I'm gonna clip my other wire. Hotchikidee. So this is all I'm throwing out the door, and I'll be left with these two parts. And now comes the difficult part, most difficult part. We're gonna have to splice this. Alright, the wire on this SJcam microphone has some braiding on it, cloth braiding, or is it cloth? I'm not even sure. But we don't have to cut that, we can actually slide that back. Hopefully you'll be able to see that, here's that braiding, and I can simply pull it back, and we'll actually be reusing the braiding. So do that on either side. And it's kind of like an accordion-like. It widens up if you push it back. Okay, so give yourself some room to play with, approximately a centimeter or so, and then we will need to cut. Maybe your wire only has a plastic sleeve, by the way, so you'll have to cut that, not cut through it, because there's the wires are in it, of course. And usually on these microphone wires, they are very, very thin and therefore fragile, so be careful. I'll be using a surgical knife, very, very sharp, and approximately 3/4 of a centimeter or a centimeter on either side. And what you are then left with is two wires on either side, obviously. One red strand or wire and one copper colored wire. Again on either side, obviously. So you'll have to splice up that red wire to the red wire and the copper colored wire to the copper colored wire. If you are splicing a microphone from a different brand, these colors could be different, obviously, but simply you'll be splicing up color to color, not cross-color splicing. Now, here is where things went wrong in my first attempt. See, these wires have a coating on them, that especially that red strand or the red wires has some kind of plastic probably coating on it, and there's probably also a coating on that copper colored wire. I'm not completely sure, but definitely on the red part. So you won't be able to solder this red stuff. You'll have to get rid of it. On my first attempt I simply used a lighter and tried to melt that off. That simply doesn't work. Yeah, so you'll have to kind of scrape that off probably. I've seen people pinch it off with their nails and put it off. What I'll be using is again that surgical knife and scrape off approximately 3/4 of the wire we've exposed. So I'm not sure if you'll be actually able to see this. Obviously you'll have to be careful, as this is thin wire, and maybe I can definitely see the changing color. I can see that the coating has gone. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that in the video, but if you'd be doing this yourself, you definitely see it. So that's an important step. Without this step the splice won't work. You'll actually see that your soldering will be very difficult if you omit this step. Difficult to impossible. So yeah, you'll know what's up if the soldering doesn't go smoothly. You've probably not exposed the wires well enough. Now I can definitely see copper on this strand now. Again, I'm not completely sure if there's shielding on the copper strand. Probably. So I'm gonna scrape that off if there's any as well. I must say that on my first splice the copper wire was easy to solder, so there is a good chance there's no shielding on that copper part of the wire. Though I must say the color does change now I'm scraping. Okay, for good measure I'd say do some scraping on the copper strand as well. Don't start your scraping right at the start of our exposed wire. We do want a bit of leftover insulation. That's basically what that coating is for, right? Insulation. So again, I've done this on a different microphone already, and after my first splice the microphone was dead, and not scraping off that coating was the reason for the microphone to be non-functional after the splice. Okay, done. Now what I'll do is solder up the red to the red and the copper to the copper strands. I won't be showing that. My camera setup doesn't really allow me to properly show that. My hands would be in the way, my head would be in the way. But I'll get back to you with the finished soldering job. Alright, if you've exposed your wires properly and set your soldering iron to the correct temperature, I use the temperature of 380 degrees Celsius. This soldering job will be easy. Your soldering tin will flow right into these strands. Confirming that, well, we now have a good bond. I've simply twisted the wires together, as you can hopefully see, soldered them up, et presto. See, I want a physically strong bond. This is a wire that might get tugged on, right? You might have the wind tug on your microphone or the connector or whatever. So we want a physically strong connection. At this point, by the way, it could be handy to test your microphone. Might not be a bad idea. But next step would be, well, basically buttoning things up. And I'll wrap one part of the strands to one side, like so. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. And the other one to the other side, making the chance of a short as small as possible. Now I'll be wrapping this part of the wire with some simple household tape. Right, so let me go and do that and show you what that looks like. Okay, to be honest, it probably would have been better to use some extra shrink tube, some thinner shrink tube for this part of the job, but you won't be able to see this. I simply added that tape for a little bit of extra physical strength for the connection. So at this point you can slide back your braiding. And it kind of should meet in the middle, more or less. And then slide your shrink tube over the entire assembly. You know what? I'm gonna use my lighter to button up that braiding a little. Otherwise I won't be able to slide the shrink tube over it. Ah, cheeky day. Okay, shrink the shrink tube. Yeah, I know this is out of focus. Ah, cheeky day. We've got ourselves a far shorter microphone cable. And it looks pretty decent actually. Yeah, so again, especially removing that the coating on the wires is what'll save the day. Without that, the splicer won't work at all. And if you're left with questions, hit me up a comment down below. I'll be happy to answer you. I hope this was helpful. Catch you on the next video. Bye bye.